Thank you all very much for coming to our panel discussion on apps for your business. All right. I'm Paul Chesek. I have the pleasure of running corporate sales for Tekserve. Some of the things that we've heard over the last year or so as it relates to apps are, whether it's around mobilizing mobilizing a sales force, creating greater productivity through iPads, creating greater productivity through the use of apps, whether it's a doctor's office or a healthcare organization, creating greater inefficiencies within an office. The apps and the way people do business today, it's all changing. And it's all here today through the use of mobile devices. It's all here today through the use of applications like some of our panelists are going to talk about today in terms of the real world usage of these apps. And what we're going to do is I'm going to introduce a few of the panelists today. They are experts in their fields, and we're going to go through sort of a series of questions. At the end, we'll have some Q&A, and we'll go from there. So without further delay, our first panelist is Zeff. He's the president of Zeff Design. They're a creative studio that helps companies merge content, technology, and business opportunities through iPad apps. Their specialty is consumer engagement and leveraging the power of storytelling to help corporations and agencies forge deeper relationships with their audiences. Joe?
Thank you. Thanks a lot. That's me. I'm going to be brief so that you can hear from these other panelists. Let me first of all just thank Tekserve for putting together this event. We've been involved in creating apps since before the iPad started, and there haven't been a lot of places where you can get the answers that you need about how to build an app, who to hire to build an app, what is an app, why to have an app, and this is really a great forum. So thank you to Tekserve and Ogilvy for making this possible. What you see on the screen are some of the iPad apps that we've designed and developed. Our specialty seems to be taking content and turning it into an interactive experience. My background is in the magazine business. I was the graphics director of Time Magazine. I was an editor at the New York Times. And basically, my studio specializes in telling stories. So the apps that you see on the screen are how we've taken what we've always traditionally done and applied it to this new medium. Solar System is an app that we designed for a company in London called TouchPress. And that app is now one of 80 apps in Apple's iPad Hall of Fame. Time Magazine app is something that came out, 3 weeks ago, where we were embedded within Time Magazine. They handed us the 10th anniversary edition of the magazine and asked us to create something special with it. And that's what we did. That's available in the App Store. Above and Beyond John Cash is a series of apps that we produce entrepreneurial in our studio. We produce apps for companies like Tekserve, for TouchPress. And then we also create our own apps. That app has been out for 2 weeks and has already been featured on the iTunes homepage. A big challenge in creating apps is letting people know about your apps, and we have been very aggressive in trying to get that word out, and I'm happy to share some of our experiences with you today. And March of the Dinosaurs is an app that came out yesterday that we designed with TouchPress, and that is this week's iTunes iPad App of the Week. What we've been able to do is take those experiences and what we've learned from creating content apps and apply them to companies both large and small. The Possibilities app is something we created for PepsiCo. And basically that app takes a lot of content that they've produced and an employment brand that we've created for them and puts it all in one place so that they can engage potential employees of the company. So this is an app that lets you learn about the company, lets you interact with people at the company, go one step further as to create a dialogue with the company. And that's a big part of the goal of this app, is to really establish a relationship, start a relationship in this platform that can carry on into a potential engagement. Splashlight is a photo studio here in Manhattan, also in Miami. And basically, we provide an experience. We let you tour their studios. So we give you an experience, but there's a business goal behind it. Once you've toured those studios, you then have the ability from within the app to begin the booking process. So both of these apps have content as their driving force, but what these apps are doing is basically underneath the hood, really fulfilling a business imperative. Real quick, what our apps do. We essentially, you know what? Let's go to the next person. Thank you.
Next up, I'd like to introduce Jason Richardson, Shopkeep.com. They provide point of sale services, software as a service, ringing up customers, collecting sales tax, printing receipts, accepting credit cards, and managing inventory and customers as well. So, welcome. Thanks, Jason.
Can you hear me with this thing? Hello? All right. Hi, my name's Jason Richardson. I'm the founder and CEO of Shopkeep.com. We are a cloud-based service for small retail and even some larger retailers. We launched last year with a web-based, cloud-based point of sale. And then when these things came out, we quickly realized that this is the best piece of hardware for any retailer to use as their register. And we jumped on it really quickly. And this app is actually now, as of yesterday, a staff favorite in the App Store for iPad. What we did is turn the iPad into a cash register. So you simply ring up your items, pay with cash, and it will print a receipt, pop the cash drawer open, works just like a regular register, then sends all the data to the cloud, so you have full reporting through a web browser anywhere, full inventory management, everything you would need, and we also have an app, so if you're a store owner, you can just pull up your iPhone. My iPhone's very cracked, and you can see your sales at any time from anywhere, which is, a simple thing to do once you're in the cloud. So let's see this is a picture of what you're looking at here. And basically, let's see, what are the important thing for what we're doing is, I don't know how many people in here are retailers. It's enterprise, but it's small enterprise. And so it was very important for us to build an inexpensive and really easily accessible solution for retailers. They can download this out of the App Store. They can play a full demo before they even sign up with us. Everything is in real time. The registers actually are local apps. As you can tell, this is a native app. And so that means that even if the internet goes down, you can still ring up sales. And also here, we also do credit card processing through the app with the iDynamo. Basically what we're seeing, we built this because I looked at point of sale terminals that are, $3,000 for a Windows PC with a touchscreen attached to it. And then I looked and saw that even a touchscreen attached to a Mac Mini is $500. And I saw that this was $500 and takes up almost no room. And it was just so clear that the iOS, the iPad is a great device for that. And these points basically, having online real-time information for a retailer for $50 a month is just huge. And we're bringing cloud technology, iOS devices to small retailers, which is just really helping them out quite a bit for about $50 a month. So that's what Shopkeep is. Thank you.
Our next panelist is Jamie Manalio from Rust. Jamie's a customer. Rust is deploying technologies for custom hardware and AV installations, creating custom interactive presentations for private and public events, and programming applications for smartphones.
Hello. Let's see what it's doing here. Well, we best to concentrate on one app that we just did recently that we're very proud of, working with Stoli Vodka. The challenge, actually, from a lot of the clients are, how do we integrate new technology with our brand? And we came up with the idea to basically come up with a dice game that people can play in a club where their brand managers across the country would go in, they'd come up to you, have you play this dice game, which would generate a drink. We have it so you can take the dice around. The dice kind of like bangs around. Sorry, I don't have it up there, but I have it here. and then it generates a drink for you by the criteria that comes up on the dice. Once you have this recipe, you get that actual drink, and then we ask for your data basically to capture the person's email address so that we can send you that particular recipe. And the follow-through is when this person receives this email, there'll be a link to go to the Facebook site, so they can basically like them on Facebook. That's the ultimate goal. To try and make the program a little smarter, what we did is we added an entire admin feature to it, as well as getting a free drink. Sometimes they have giveaways, free t-shirts or tchotchkes and things like that. So we have giveaways, which you can see as the dice sometimes come up as a winner. That would mean that that person would win. In the admin area here, I know it's small for you to see, but you're able to turn the giveaways on or off. You can also stack the odds. If you have a lot of things to give away, you can make 1 in 3 win, or 1 in 5, or 1 in 20. And then once everything's given away, you turn it off. So there's no more winners, nobody gets upset. Another smart back end we feel from this is managing the drinks. Going to certain bars, they might not carry Stoli Blueberry. So you simply turn Stoli Blueberry off. All of those recipes are unavailable, so somebody doesn't get a drink that they can't actually get at that particular bar. The program as well, turn that back. There's also captures the location of where you are, and of course is tied to a database. So 40 of these units are around the country, and all of them report to a common database so they could see how many people participated in each location, as well as who followed through. The data that's captured is more than the email. It also grabs your name. You can also put your Twitter handle in if you want to do an immediate tweet. And it takes that information, and when you go to the Facebook site, it pre-populates that information into a page so that you can engage in what they were calling their alter ego. If you've seen the on-air campaign going on right now, it's "Would you have a drink with you?" So they want you to make an alter ego of yourself so you would have a drink with yourself. And that's what actually happens on the Facebook site to get the people to like it. Ultimately, it's not a new activity. It's just taking activity that exists and turning it digital and making it a little smarter so it's an actual tool for the brand managers that are using it. And it's been very successful. In fact, they're redoing it this year. We're in the process of doing the next round, where we're adding a few more games. There's going to be a spin the bottle game, which should be very interesting, giving out pickup lines and such, which is going to be out in all 40 markets by January 1st. Thanks.
Got it?
I didn't actually click through all my bullet points.
No, that's all right.
Sorry.
You talked to all of them beautifully.
There you go. Thanks, guys.
Next up, I'd like to introduce Aaron Freimark. He's our Director of IT at Tekserve. He's been integrating Apple products in the enterprise for about 20 years now. He's the founder of Enterprise iOS, which is a website around sort of the iOS community, both blogging. There's a lot of product reviews and strategy around sort of what we're seeing out in the marketplace. So, Aaron?
Paul, you promised me a shorter podium, didn't you?
Sorry about that.
So, hi. Enterprise iOS is a site that I helped create with some colleagues from Tekserve over a year ago. It basically comes out of the idea that iOS administrators really don't have many resources for where to go to. That's a funny combination of words, right? iOS and administrator. They don't usually like sitting next to each other in a place. iOS is very personal. It's an individual device, and administrators really imply there's some complexity, there's some management that has to go on to change how the user's behavior is. What this really comes down to is for those of us who are trying to deploy these in businesses, there's a lot of interesting issues that come up. There's a lot of things that really it helps to have a community to be a part of, to get some different ideas and to get some information. So the site is not only a free site and a free resource for people to use, it's also built on top of a wiki. So the idea is everybody can contribute and update articles, and so the best practices ends up bubbling up to the top of what you can do. There's also, and this is the screenshot up here, a really unique, I think, place that some of the technology has come together in a comparison. Mobile device management is something that you are going to hear about today. If you haven't, a lot of you have heard about it already. It's kind of an important component of deploying iPads into businesses. On this site, we have a comparison of mobile device management providers on over 80 points. You can put them side by side and really take a look at how things work out that way. Okay, so I can talk more about it later during question and answer. Thanks.
Next, I'd like to introduce Joe Wachs from Xcube Labs. Xcube Labs is a specialty mobile app development firm offering end-to-end solutions across a range of mobile applications, whether it's an iPad, whether it's an Android device, anything from gaming all the way to enterprise apps. So, Joe, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hey, folks. I'd like to thank Joe Zeff for inviting us here today. If you don't know Joe Zeff, you should. Thank you, Joe. Xcube Labs is a design-driven mobile solutions company. We don't say we're an app development company because we do work on projects that are outside of smartphones. We have a design center headquartered in Dallas, Texas. I'm here in New York City running what we call the research lab for special projects. I'm working with clients such as United Health Group, Hasbro, Mattel, 24 Hour Fitness, in order to bring their napkin sketches to reality by working with our design center, finding a voice, finding a concept for their idea, and helping to build that into a product. I'm highlighting this particular app right here called Blue Loop, which is a diabetes glucose measurement device. It's not the sexiest app that we have in our portfolio, but it is one of the more touching and emotional products that we've worked on. Personally, I have folks in my network of family and friends who suffer from diabetes, and this was a great project to find a very simple and elegant path to helping individuals monitor their glucose level, sync the data up to the back-end website, and have their family and their physicians be able to monitor the data there. I bring this up, this particular app up, to start the conversation about web services and specialized APIs and the importance of the connectivity of data aggregating to the app as a client and moving data information back and forth to a back-end server, because the data is so important. Here, the data is critical to someone's health and life and well-being, and other places it's critical to running the business, making the transaction, etc. What we do is we take an idea or a concept, like I said before, and we work strategically with the client to have a discovery session. We find the voice and the concept of this product, and then we work with a group of engineers who are overseas in Hyderabad, India, where the company was founded, and we work directly with this group of designers, strategists, and engineers to manifest the idea of the client. This is a perfect example of a successful project where the client is very pleased with the concept of connecting the Blue Loop ideology to the National Diabetes Center and having a nice poetic connectivity of the idea. And this project will be released soon and will be available on the App Store for you to be able to see the tricks and the elegant details behind it. Okay? So when I joined the panel, I want to bring this one up a little bit more to speak about the importance of web services, enterprise, and this will come up again in terms of stability and connectivity. Okay? Thanks.
Thanks, Joe. I'd like to introduce John Boese, the Director of Digital Innovation at Ogilvy and Mather here in New York. John consults across the Ogilvy Group on emerging media projects in mobile, gaming, social media, and digital out-of-home. He's one of the founding members of the mobile practice here at Ogilvy and currently leads mobile engagements for many of Ogilvy's clients. John?
I won't go through his bullets. So we've done a lot of apps here at Ogilvy and Mather. Most of them have been consumer focused, and so we'll build apps for IBM, Kodak, Johnson & Johnson to help engage the consumers. And it's really part of an overall campaign that they're doing where they'll have a TV ad, a print ad, and then want to have more user engagement on these mobile devices. We saw initially it was mostly consumer oriented, but now we're getting a lot of our clients who are interested in apps for the enterprise, like sales enablement tools for pharmaceutical companies and other types of health insurance companies. So we're starting to move more into that area and doing some of the apps like you were seeing presented earlier. One I want to talk about, though, is a one we recently ran for New Balance. So New Balance is that shoe manufacturer, and they opened up a new store here in New York City of all New Balance shoes. And their challenge was they wanted people to know about the store opening and to drive foot traffic into the store. So we created a game that lasted an entire month called Urban Dash. It was on the iPhone. And what you did was every day we released 10 to 20 virtual batons throughout New York City. And you turn on the app and you would see a map. You would see where you are and you would see where the batons are. So maybe there's a baton in Battery Park. You have to physically go down there, you pick up the baton, and then it's a race to run into the store to redeem the baton. When you bring the baton in the store, you get a free pair of shoes or other prizes. Interestingly enough, though, other people who are playing this game could see who has the baton and they could steal it from you. So you literally had to run into the store, and if they were within 100 feet, they could steal from you. The average baton was stolen 4 times. We had batons that were stolen up to 100 times. And the winner who brought most of the batons into the store during this 1-month period got a 24-karat gold baton worth $20,000. So we just gave it to him yesterday. It was actually a contestant on The Amazing Race who actually did this, so that was great. But you could have just imagined all the stealing batons. I heard curse words going on and all this other stuff, but we drove people into the store. And the best thing I heard was from a store employee who said that literally some people ran into the store. As soon as they got it, into the store, they won, and they would raise their hands up in the air and say, "I'm a winner." So it's exactly what we wanted to do for New Balance. I won't go through my bullets either.
I hope by those introductions, you guys, we've got some pretty smart people sitting up here, will hopefully answer a lot of questions that I'm going to kind of put forth. But then at the end of the conversation, sort of any questions that the audience may have as well. I think I want to start first with the overall process relative to sort of start to end, to management, to support of the apps. I think, Joe, I'd like to sort of put it out to you. I think, relative to creation, give us a sense of the overall process sort of related to creation and how these things get deployed.
Sure. Well, creativity is a powerful thing. And when that power is directed toward achieving certain business objectives and overcoming challenges, that's when you really experience what creativity can do. So when I'm meeting with a client, generally, I get a lot of calls from people who want to build an app. And a lot of times those calls, the people who are calling aren't quite sure why they want to build an app. They've either been directed to build an app, or their competitor has built an app, or there's just this general sort of buzz about apps where, hey, I'd like to have an app. And the first question I generally ask is, what are your business challenges? What are the things that you're not currently able to do as well as you need to be able to do for your business to grow? And from there, we attach that creativity toward that challenge. A lot of the times that means figuring out what is the story behind your company. What is the story that you're hoping to tell? Are you hoping to market a product? Are you hoping to educate an audience? Are you hoping to reach more people? Once we can really identify what you're hoping to do, we can a lot of times take assets that are already in existence and repurpose them, repackage them, add functionality to them towards meeting those goals in this new platform. That's sort of how the creative process begins.
John or Joe, anything to add around that?
Well, I would definitely agree with what you said about really finding out what the business needs are and their goals are. And I'd say a lot of my job is actually telling people not to do apps. So, for every one we do, there's probably 50 or 60 ideas that clients come and say they want this, but it's really not going to really meet their objectives. And I know before you guys were talking about, being featured in the iPad store. That's hugely important because a lot of these apps, if there's hundreds of thousands of these like iPhone apps in the marketplace, it's really hard to get noticed. So everyone thinks people are just going to love their app, but it is hard to get it featured and to get the word out there.
I would say the creativity part is very misunderstood. Joe's right. It's a magical and powerful thing. When folks come to us, they either come to us with a design problem or an engineering problem or a marketing problem. Most of the time, they have their business plan all worked out, but they're looking for a way to enter into this space. And whether it's an engineering problem or a design problem, it really is a design problem. And by design, I don't mean aesthetics as much as I mean the logic and the flow of how the app is supposed to work. One of the things that we do when people come to us with apps that have already gone through a version 1.0 and they come to us to recalibrate that experience is to metaphorically dunk it underwater and find out where the air bubbles are. We take apart the app, we do a full architectural breakdown of wireframing and have 2 or 3 people comb through the whole app and try to find where it's broken, where it's not working, where the concept is broken, and fix it from a design standpoint to patch those holes.
Okay. So we got through the creative stage. Everybody's come up with the great ideas. We've kind of assembled it on a whiteboard or however you guys go about that, right? From a deployment perspective, Aaron, Jamie, you guys Aaron, you talked about MDM before. You talked about deploying yours. So from a deployment, give us some perspective around, what tools, how you go about it, what's sort of your, philosophically around that.
Well, for the first deployment, for the particular Stoli thing, we sent it out to 40 different markets, and we could pre-program them to send them out. But then the first thing the client asked is, who can they call if there's any kind of support questions on how to use it, or if there's any issues with the iPad itself. The next question that comes is, how do we update it? That's the big one. In the past, we've had to schedule time with brand managers to get them on the phone and talk them through how to do it themselves, which is a nightmare. It's just that they're brand managers. They're not IT people. There's certain technical things they don't know. So it becomes a very hard process. What we did is we talked to Tekserve and got involved with an MDM. Basically proposed the situation. We needed a way to get updates as Stoli comes out with a new flavor. We have to update the app and make sure that the new bottle and all the new artwork is in there, and the flavors and recipes are all in there. So we would create the app, give it over to Tekserve, and then they came up with a solution for us to push the new app out to all 40 iPads. Using they don't work through 3G because of the size of the app, but will work through the internet, through Wi-Fi. So as long as the iPad is powered on and connected to the Wi-Fi, the new app will replace the old. And it'll also report back and let us know who's been updated and who hasn't, so that we can contact them and and let them know to take care of them themselves. It's actually turned into a very smooth process. There's an icon that exists now on the desktop of the actual. I even have it on mine. There's an icon that comes up in the top left corner, and it says Stoli Update. And a little text message will pop up, and it'll say, okay to update your Stoli app. They just touch the icon, and it automatically goes and grabs the new version, downloads and replaces it, and they're ready to go.
I think it's important to point out something that's implied a little bit, that some of us are developing retail-focused apps that are distributed through the App Store. And obviously, there's a whole update mechanism that's already in place in the deployment that's there. Then you're worried more about marketing. What Jamie is referring to is what's referred to, it's what's known as in-house apps. They're apps for your own use. And does everybody are familiar with the distinction here? The challenges with doing an in-house app, as you're saying, Joe, as you're saying, is that you don't leverage the Apple infrastructure for that. You don't leverage the App Store for your in-house apps. You don't leverage their push mechanism for sending out updates or the icons that are there. It's really up to each business to develop on their own. Now Apple's announced a program to have like private stores for business use, but there's a number of issues with that. You have to charge. You can't use it for free apps. If you're developing for internal use free applications, it's still up to each provider to come up with their own solution for that. And that's where things like mobile device management help. That's the things like mobile application management help with that.
And there's some good tools like Test Flight app on the web. That's what we used when we were in beta. We found it late, but it kind of sends out an email and says, click here to update. And that was really helpful.
Yeah, one thing I would throw into this mix in case, just sort of based on my own experience, I mean, the whole idea of an iPad app is still relatively new. The iPad's been around for, what is it, a year and a half or whatever it is. 2 years ago, none of us knew what any of this is. We're all new at it. And unlike a lot of technology, this is technology that is now being implemented and initiated by people who don't come from the IT department, from the marketing department, from the editorial department. And I guess what I'd like to say is I come from the editorial world, and a lot of the complications of how do I deploy my app? I can build an app, I can come up with a story and build it and design it, and then it comes to, other than sending it to the iTunes store, what if I have a corporation that wants to basically put it on 40 devices in 40 different places in the world? And that's where I'm finding it to be really a very powerful thing to view the experience of creating an app from a developer standpoint as a real partnership. And the idea that when I run into technical hurdles, I bring in a partner who knows what they're doing. And part of the way I've met a lot of the people on the panel is that exact way. I was working on a project that involved a point of sale system. We could figure out how to build a point of sale system. It might take us a year or two and a lot of money. He already has one. So that's how we met. And it sort of goes on and on and on. It's just really important, I think, for the speakers as well as the audience, for everyone to just really come to that realization that we're not all programmers and that there are resources out there that can make this as seamless as the experience of using an app. The experience of creating an app doesn't have to be complicated.
I think one of the things that I'd like to ask Jason about is really around sort of the back-end integration to, taking data at a point-of-sale system from an app, and then sort of that information needs to go someplace, right? It needs to go to some sort of an ERP system. How does that whole sort of, we talked a little bit about web services before, things around security and questions like that. How would you sort of address that?
Well, that's important. Actually, I wanted to mention that. I mean, APIs on the web are what make apps interesting. You can do all kinds of interesting stuff. We have, essentially, our entire platform is a cloud platform. It's built with an API that allows communication between whatever terminal is ringing up sales and our back-end cloud, which is where we keep all the data. These things actually delete data as soon as the shift is over. So it downloads all your items and your customers when you activate it, and during each shift it does an update, and then it does a sale and it sends it up to the web. If this thing blows up, then it doesn't matter. You haven't lost anything because we store it up on the cloud, and on every shift we delete it. And so there's a caching process here, and that's very important. Actually, it took us quite a while to get right, but that's very important for our business because registers have to always stay on. But another cool thing something that ShopKeep's doing is just publishing more of an API for retail. We really want to see other people develop that iOS, that handheld device that takes inventory. Goes around your back room, scan a barcode, I've got 12. We want to publish this sort of information so that someone can build another BI tool for retailers on our API. And that's really how we're going to grow, is by building this API in a developer community around ShopKeep, and as well other registers. We actually have one customer, a franchise, that built their own register because they have their own way of doing things. And they built it on our platform because it was much faster and easier, because the register is really the part of the business where there's special workflows. As far as running reports, seeing your sales and all that stuff, we already have that in the cloud, but they wanted to ring things up in a special way. So, that's where we're hoping to enable a whole bunch of app developers to sell things through our store, through the App Store,
Jason,
because of the API.
Can I emphasize something that you said, the whole offline caching, the sync? Mobile devices are really different from these big heavy cache registers that sit on a table, because those are constantly connected to a network, and you can predict. Many of them, if they lose network, they totally lose power. They shut down. Mobile device is totally different. You are out, you're wandering around. That's the whole point. You put it in people's hands, and so they can wander around. Right? There's a whole difficulty. I was at WWDC, the Apple's developer conference, and they are basically reinventing how Internet Protocol works for these devices, because Internet Protocol was designed for mainframes, for big machines, terminals that are always connected. It wasn't designed for a device that's switching from Wi-Fi to 3G, back to Wi-Fi. Now there's no signal. Now it's edge. Now it's 3G again. Each time it's a different IP address. Each time the connection goes up and down and changes. It's critical for anything that you want to have some continuity with, to do local caching, to be able to allow somebody to keep using the device.
Yeah,
and like you said, it's very difficult to come up with those strategies.
It's important for other apps. I've seen other apps, I won't mention the name, but it was for taking email addresses on the iPad, and we took it to an event, and I was like, this is great. It'll go straight into our email list in the cloud. But the thing, as soon as you hit submit, you had to wait for it to go up and send the email address. And I'm like, why? You got to cache it locally and send it later. Because I had a line of people who wanted to put their email address in, and it had to keep waiting. So those are. It is important to do it that way. And it, for us, it's great because really there's no way you can be offline. The app has battery, or the iPad has battery, and you can always pop that cache drawer and ring up cache no matter what. Internet down, network down, and power off. So it's important.
I was going to speak to the fact that all of this creates an opportunity for the designers and the business folks and the engineers themselves to become interdisciplinary. The designers are learning code in order to communicate in the same language as the engineers. The engineers are understanding pre-production and post-production and what formats are necessary, what formats work. The business folks are learning the poetry of all this techno-babble. And it's a great opportunity for everybody who's entering into this space to raise the bar a little bit and learn that language.
This sort of brings, from my perspective, you've got all these devices out there, you've got all this information coming in. I just was curious relative to the impact on traditional IT organizations, right, in terms of what that's happening. I'd like to sort of hear from, Aaron, John, maybe around sort of, what is that impact, whether it be security issues, whether it be infrastructure issues. I think everybody would like to hear a little bit about that.
Sure. I refer to the culture change that's happening. He laughs every time I mention that. There's a couple interesting ways to approach it. I mean, for one, when you're talking about culture, to me, it's a mobile culture, that you have these devices. How many of you have a smartphone or an iPad right now today? All right, that's a pretty safe question, right? How many of you, since we started the panel, have checked it? Okay. So that's what mobile is about. You're constantly touching your device. You're constantly taking out. You're constantly looking at it, and it's a bit of a compulsion. And I mean, the society pressures, and how that's changing society aside, in terms of how it is for business, in terms of how the users want to use these devices, you want to constantly be on. Okay, you don't want to, but you are constantly working. You're constantly checking email. You're constantly connected. You're checking the reports. You're seeing who's in touch with you now, who's mentioning my name, who's tagging my photo on Facebook. And that part, the constant connectivity, is, I think, the biggest challenge for IT. You don't have hours that you're on the computer and you're in a building like this, in a fortress with security guards, and nothing's coming out, and then out. And then you're away after the end of the day. You're on all the time, and there's no security guards, there's no physical security, you're just always connected. You have to have access to that data. You're not going to put up with, I can only have the private data between these hours or through this special app. You just want it at your fingertips all the time. And for IT departments, that's a really big challenge because they're not used to that. So it's not so much about what iPads are bringing and what Apple is doing. It's more about the always-on culture. So there's a different strategy that you have to take with securing iOS. And I'm fond of saying that, security is not an app, right? People want a quick solution. You download this app or you have this service, and then that can make your iPad secure. It's not. It's a whole series of strategies, and then there's tools that you have to have, and then you have to have the expertise and the skills to use the tools. Those three things together.
And I would second that with just the expertise and the skills and knowing the tools. So all of my clients, they hit this for the first time when they're starting to understand some of these issues that you're talking about. And a lot of times they realize they don't have the in-house expertise. And so I see a lot of them just building up more of that toolkit and bringing on new people. And, for the organizations, they all handle it differently, but it's usually something that they weren't thinking about. And sometimes they learn the lesson the hard way is they do something and then it's not working properly within the organization. So it's really just finding somebody who really knows the effects that it's going to have in your organization, getting them involved, and getting that expertise right off the bat.
Sort of into sort of the next step around organization. I think I heard it a couple of times during your quick little pitches here around different departments, if functional areas. Where are you guys seeing the most action, the most sort of, people coming and say, hey, listen, I want to build this app for this? Where are you guys sort of seeing the biggest sort of areas of this sort of challenge that people are trying to take on?
I could kick that off. I mean, not surprisingly, I think it's pretty apparent to everybody that the publishing industry has just completely been turned upside down by the opportunities provided by the iPad and other tablets. What's been interesting for me personally is that, for the past decade, our background at my studio has been creating magazine covers. We still do quite a bit. The current Rolling Stone cover is something we created. But my dialogues with magazines were always with the art director. Now, all of a sudden, I'm meeting with the chief marketing officer of the company who's trying to figure out how to create a new business model for their company. I'm meeting with the chief technology officer who's trying to figure out how to leverage some of the things that we're doing at our small studio in New Jersey to do things on a bigger level. So what's interesting is, like, from a sector standpoint, obviously publishing is an area that's exploding, but it's creeping into these other areas to the point where, for me, it's no longer effective to have a meeting with just the editorial department or just the marketing department. I need everybody in one room, because ultimately, to take full advantage of what these devices can do for a company, you really need all of those areas to sort of converge and be on the same team.
Yeah, I'd like to respond to that. What's interesting is Joe and I have had a lot of talks about the publishing industry and how it's changing. The publishing industry is not on the forefront of our business. It's not penetrating the service offering of our company. What's really leading the way is marketing, and strangely, or not so strangely, from a gaming perspective. Joe started in publishing and it evolved into that direction. The founders of our company started in casual gaming and wrote some of the original rules and really wrote the book on casual gaming. And what's happened is they've evolved that division of Xcube into a dedicated gaming company. And what's the residual effects of that is that these larger branded companies who come to us, they think that they want a game now. They think if we have a game, it could be a catalyst for a marketing campaign. And that's where we talk them out of that. And we end up incorporating game mechanics, game techniques, gaming patterns, so that you have that type of engagement and that kind of loyalty treatment to the end user. But overall, it's a different kind of experience. It's not a game. And it's certainly not publishing, except for the fact that it's digital publishing.
We're seeing, traditionally what Tekserve is sold to is, purchasing departments, IT departments. With the iPads, it's really different. It's coming up as, maybe you should take my microphone for a little bit. Surprisingly, one of the biggest purchasers of iPads now are human resources departments. This is a fantastic training platform, both for onboarding and for continuing training and for product training. Sales departments are using this to get out in front of the workforce. And another hallmark of the iPad is that It's not being purchased through normal channels. Sales department can buy this all without going through the normal purchasing area. And this becomes a challenge because, as some of our customers know, this comes up and now, it gets deployed, and then the IT department says, wait, what's this? Wait, I didn't recognize this device. I didn't approve this. We don't have a plan for this. How does it meet this criteria? Where's the antivirus software? Right?
Well, yeah, and I'll jump in here and be a panelist for a second. I think from sort of consistency of content, consistency of brand, right, being able to push the right information at the right time to a lot of different people, so everybody's speaking the same language to their customers. Remote sales organizations are, incredibly productive, and the marketing people are a heck of a lot happier when they know there's one version of a keynote presentation versus, 80 versions of the same presentation with different marketing and branding going on. So there's a way to sort of limit the liability, so to speak, relative to what's out there in front of customers and prospects. Right?
I just wanted to throw in one more thing. What we're finding is that mobile and these new mobile apps, it allows us as an ad agency to help them really transform their whole business. So what we're doing is we're looking at all of our clients. Let's say it's a UPS, and it's like, okay, if you have a mobile app, how can that help me figure out when the driver is going to be at my place to drop off my package? And so, we've gone from marketing focus, and then it was more like sales enablement tools that we were helping people with. And now we're looking at every single client saying, how can you fundamentally do things different with these devices? So it's really coming up all over for us.
Anybody else? Anything there? No? Okay, good. I think I'd like to open it up to Q&A now, but one of the things that we're going to do first is I just want to let everybody know that this is being recorded, first and foremost. And we've got some folks running around with mics, so we're going to record you as you want to ask your question. So I'll go into sort of Phil Donahue mode here and kind of step out. Right here.
Hi. So a question about for ShopKeep. When new technologies are introduced, historically, we've seen that they tend to replicate the previous systems, make them a little bit lighter, a little bit faster, but not necessarily a real paradigm shift. With ShopKeep, I'm curious about how you envision the future with everybody with smartphones in their pocket. So it's not just about the register, it's about what everybody has in their pocket.
No, absolutely. I have all kinds of really cool ideas that I want to do. We definitely want to see payment being happen between ShopKeep and a phone. For us right now, we're still we need to cover the bases so that retailers will replace their point of sale with ShopKeep or their cash register. But I think we're getting there now. And there's a lot of people making payment apps out there. There's really no NFC capability, although this device actually will do NFC soon if that is ever important. I'm still not 100% sure NFC is going to be the thing. But no, we have, I guess in payments is really the one place I think that's really interesting. I come at it from a retail. I own a grocery store and a wine store, and I still own them. And so I come at this to help retailers. And there's a lot of people coming at it from a consumer side, how they want to buy. And as I was talking about, part of our API strategy is to just allow those people to build their payment devices or their couponing devices, couponing apps, payment apps, whatever it might be, into our register through our API, and then let the best ones win, essentially.
If I'm in your grocery store and I've already picked out food, I want to know which wine I should get.
Yes,
before I'm at the register.
Yeah, that starts getting really complicated because now you've got some that's decision making in there, and that's all based on taste anyway. But yeah, I mean those things will come, and I'm hoping, just like I said, other people will come up with it. With some sort of an add-on that can pull that data and make those decisions. We really do just want to be the transaction processing engine of your store, and let other people build those cool add-ons on that help you run a better business. We'll help you too with our with sales data, but those kind of things. There's a lot of people coming up with creative stuff. Thanks.
Jay, I just want to ask a follow-up to that, Jason, real quick. From a return on investment perspective, with your solution versus sort of traditional, what do you guys see relative to those types of numbers?
Well, I haven't calculated return on investment, but I can tell you that it's no brainer. We were at Coffee Fest last weekend in Seattle, and basically, the iPad plus a nice stand plus a printer and cash drawer comes to about $1,300, $1,400 all in, and then $50 a month. And people don't believe me. They're like, "What do you mean? I don't have to pay you a couple $1,000s for the software." The guys around the corner wanted to sell something for $5,000. So the upfront cost to get in is easier. And yes, and if it doesn't work, you have an iPad. It obviously, but it does make it easier to switch, though, is one of the things. A lot of point of sale vendors get you with they try and lock you in with hardware. And of course, they lock you in with that sunk cost. If you pay $5,000 for your software up front, you're not switching. We see that all the time. We don't actually try and switch anyone. We're just getting new customers and people on cash registers. But as we add more cool stuff like that is like, yeah, I'm willing to throw out my old point of sale for this better system. We'll see more of that, I think.
I don't think it's on.
Okay. It seems that device optimized websites, to me, are probably more important than specific apps. So take, for example, like a J.Crew, if you pull up their website, you can choose to visit the full site, or you can visit a device optimized site, whether that's on a smartphone or a tablet. And I think it's just sort of antiquated and weird to have to go proactively download an app to do things on a device that are, quote unquote, interesting. And I wonder if people on the panel have thought about the current method of downloading apps as sort of something that will go away. Either they'll be sort of invisible and experienced in sort of a more natural way, or if apps are really more sort of about entertainment and kind of like diversion versus, true like commerce and revenues. And maybe Joe.
Yeah, sure. I deal with this question all the time, and a lot of times I will tell a client, you could pay X dollars for us to build an app, but in reality, we can't really do much more for you than putting that on a website. There are some areas where that's not the case. The reality is there's no micropayment system out there that rivals having an iTunes account. So the ability to make an impulse buy using your iTunes account is something that, there's PayPal, but that's going to involve fewer steps. There's a lot of times I'm just going through the App Store and I'll take one of these and one of these and one of these, and I don't really have to do much other than tap that thing and suddenly my credit card is charged. So until there's another micropayment system out there, which I don't see yet, the apps still have a home. I think the other area is that an app lets you download the content to your device to get an immediate response. The app we did for Time Magazine is really based on seeing a lot of multimedia. We chose for the first time at Time Inc. to actually take all that content and download it to your device so that you could go from page to page and have a very fluid experience. If that lived on a website, each of those videos would have to stream to your device, and you would also be at the mercy of whether or not you had an internet connection. So the ability to take that experience and basically store it locally on a device is something where an iPad is helpful, and also for e-commerce, which frankly is a huge driver of why a lot of apps are built in the first place.
Right there.
I was very intrigued by your comment about the transformation of the whole organization and how you do business differently. The enterprises that I'm in touch with are looking at that from more of an innovation standpoint, but finding other barriers within the company, IP, legal, HR, whatever. And I'm wondering, as you guys get further down this road, how are you dealing with that, or what are you telling your clients in that regard?
Yeah, I would say it's extremely difficult because whenever you are trying to transform the way you do things, all of these things come up, and who owns what, and making sure everyone's on board. So I think it's very difficult. It's worked best when a corporation has a very high-level person who's a champion of it and really rallies everyone around. But if you don't have that, it's a lot of different factions saying, here are all the problems, and no one kind of driving it through.
I think if I could add to that, I think that's a reason why you see a grocer creating an app that's featured on the iTunes homepage, and you see an illustrator creating apps that are outselling apps by major publishers. I think that agility is something that's really valuable in this area, and that's why you see a Flipboard suddenly calling the shots for major publishers. I think that we're entering a period where agility is a very precious driver of growth, and hopefully what we'll continue to see is that larger companies, and I'm seeing it at a lot of levels, will start to embrace this sort of wildcat entrepreneurial spirit that's really pushing, things on the, on the grassroots level.
Fundamentally, people approach the iPad from one of 2 points of view. It's a fad or it's a total change in how computing works. And you're not going to convince somebody one or the other. That's really one of the beliefs you have. And luckily, look, you guys are all here. This is great. It's there's plenty of people who believe it, who really are there. And I mean, this is why I started. I started the website just as Tekserve was getting their head wrapped around these little devices, and that it's like, what are we going to do with those things? It's like, because I really buy into it.
GE does there's an interesting case study on General Electric where I think their overall sort of time from start to finish from a development perspective, no matter where it is sort of in that 3 weeks or something like that, 3 or 4 weeks, something like that.
You said from whiteboard
to app deployment and done people using it, 2 to 4 weeks. So you take a look at sort of traditional development cycles of, a year, right? 6 months, a year, 18 months, 24 months, all the QA and things that have to occur. It's changing the dynamic and the paradigm in terms of how people, from my perspective, how people are going to go about creating these tools for organizations to use. It's just certainly my opinion, but I certainly think it's going there, absolutely, and it's here to stay. If General Electric's using it, it's there. Question? Sure, go ahead.
How do you recommend that small businesses, people that aren't Time Warner or New Balance, go about finding a developer? Because my Google search for New York City app developer did not yield the bounty that I was hoping for.
I think we've got some people sitting up here that would probably love to have a conversation with you.
Yeah, there are people. It's to find them. I have to say, Tekserve can help hook you up. We're launching a tool on Enterprise iOS. It's a resource for iOS developers that focus on business.
Is there a central, other than like the New York City meetup group, are you guys under any type of umbrella organization? Is there like a master website that lists all the developers? Still a Wild West?
Oh, they're random cowboys. They're all over the place.
I will say that
Give me a call. There you go.
I will say that the Enterprise iOS website is the first thing I've seen that represents sort of a yellow pages for that sort of thing. I mean, we get a lot of our calls based on people seeing our apps, or they read an article about us, or there's something, or we come up in a Google search. But a lot of those calls, frankly, I would be happy if they went to other companies that were better suited to handle that kind of work. I mean, that's one thing that's very interesting about this sort of phenomenon of being a developer right now. I don't see these guys as my competitors. I see them as potential partners. And it's really about knowing what we do well and how, like a gear, we can connect to somebody else who does something well so that we can satisfy what General Electric wants on one hand and what your business wants in the other, assuming you're not from General Electric. And that's kind of the spirit of what's happening. It's a very sort of open source, transparent environment. And I think the website that Aaron's been putting together is helpful. And I don't see it as, wow, now everyone's going to know who else to call. It's more like, that's great, because I see it also as a developer as here are more resources I can plug into for things that I want to be able to provide to my clients.
Jamie, anything to add there?
Well, I was going to say the way the programming works, per se, at least for me, is I'm partnered with another company that has what you would call the puzzle master of doing programming. And then there are about 20 freelancers all across the country. We have a couple in Texas, New Jersey, Boston. For example, the guy from Boston is our database master. He has hundreds of databases that he's built. Once we figure out, have the storyboard phase done, and we know what the app is going to do and be, then we contact him. He grabs something off the shelf that's close and caters it, so we're not building from scratch. We're repurposing whatever code we can. And then we have all the individual people to do the interface if we provide the design, or if the design is provided to us. And then we take all these pieces, and the puzzle master puts it all together. So it's an interesting process. I mean, there are like one-stop shopper people, but they're very few and far between, and it's very hard to wear all those hats. So it's good to be able to have different resources for different projects, right people for the right job, kind of thing.
Stefan over there.
If you could tell us maybe very quickly the pros and cons between going with a native application versus a web mobile application.
Sure, I'll take that. And my comment really encapsulates a response to some of these last questions, and that is the idea that an app, specifically a native app, is really called an app and not an application for a reason. It's a very succinct and focused set of tasks with a nice concept wrapped around it, and the ability to go to that app and do 1, 2, or 3 specific things. Of course, on the iPad, there's a full immersive experience that you can go into, especially with publishing and video and media, and having this immersive experience. But an app is really a set finite set of actions. It's interesting for you to ask about optimized web and HTML5, because from an end user's perspective, there's a lot of opportunity there for the experience that you might have. From the developer's perspective, and I'm biased, of course, but we come from a place of customization. I mean, we do custom work inside and outside of the Apple SDK. So our ability to navigate the experience is a little bit different than what the HTML5 and other just web optimized platforms might give you. So for us, it's about control, it's about nuance, and it's about adding a little bit more pop and wow to that experience.
One more back there.
You can quote me on the pop and wow.
Hi, thank you. I'm very interested in knowing if you have any clients in the foundation world or nonprofit world, and if you do, how do apps play out in that field?
I'm in the middle of working with Earth Day New York right now, but we're in the process of contracting, so I really can't talk about the idea. But we are doing some pro-social work with them. Basically, it's just a way to gather donations through a festival that could be here, and I guess I can talk to some of it. If they do like a booth or something like that at a street fair, or just have like an event, can they have a kiosk or something people can do, log on to and like capture stuff. It's interesting because they asked for an app, but what they really wanted was a website that can take donations. But then they wanted accessible through smart devices, which we just made a mobile-friendly version of their site so that people can access it.
I can speak about education, which does overlap in some ways, different in a lot of other ways as well. But so I'm helping my kids' public school to do a pilot project with apps with iOS. They're not yet at the stage of designing their own apps specifically for this, but in terms of they've got 30 devices they purchased, and they are rolling them out first to board members and administration and seeing how it works and getting teachers to borrow them and things like that. Our school just took a trip to the local farm, and the teacher was right there with her iPad making a movie of the whole thing. And just the next day, she had already edited it into a video and put it up there. So, and it was great. It was up on Vimeo, and you have the whole thing. And she did the whole thing on the iPad. So, to be able to put something like that in your bag, to have it be both the recording device and the editing device, I mean, how much is that saving in terms of complexity or in terms of ease of use, or just, that you can carry it all over the place with it. So now my role in that project really is to help counsel them, okay, as early as possible, you want to plan what you're going to do with them. You want to plan a system for kind of keeping tabs on how these are being used. Especially in a school where there's lots of regulations about filtering, content filtering, and how kids can use them. But as well, just in any sort of deployment, they're going to be easy to manage if they're all kind of level, if they're all the same versions, if they all have the same systems, the same sort of configurations. The best tool we have for that now is mobile device management. And that's really much better to put on at the very beginning as soon as possible, because just about every deployment is going to grow. Sometimes they're going to grow huge. So try to have a very good pilot and think about these things as early as possible so that later on you're much more prepared. The world's changing very quickly, as you pointed out. The whole the whole world is a year and a half old for this. So things are changing, but that's even more reason to kind of have a good foundation.
Well, listen, it's 2 o'clock. We're sort of out of time. We're going to hang out here for a little bit. So if there's questions that you guys want to ask for another 15 minutes or so, feel free to kind of walk up. I'd like to thank our panelists, each and every one of you, for your time today. I know time is of the essence for everybody. Tekserve certainly appreciates it. We look forward to continuing our partnerships with each and every one of you. Again, thank you to Ogilvy, and thank you all for coming. We appreciate it.